It's funny, I don't see the record option on my, well, yeah, there it is.
It says it's recording,
Just showed.
so
Yep, just showed.
yep.
All right. All right. Well, hey, thank you for coming and eating Panera with us. I don't have mine, but I'm fine. Uh, it's actually 2:30, 2:40 here, so already gone there. I have asked Steve Pike to join us and just give us a high level 5-minute kind of high vision overview of what this would look like and why it's important. Steve is a friend of Timberline. He's also a friend of mine for, gosh, we're getting old, like 25 plus years.
Probably, yeah.
And Steve is kind of a guru of the church planning world. And he is he's sought after to do a bunch of church planning, but he has stepped away from some of the high level leadership. Not that he's not leading now. He has done that in order to kind of keep the dirt under his fingernails in church planning with some local efforts, and that has grown into now national and then international. And so high respect for Steve and what he does, and this vision of implementing business and church planning is his vision he talked to me about. And so that's how we got involved. So Steve, I'll give it up to you. And then I told you we'd only need you for 5 minutes. It's already been 10. We're asking you for another 5, and then we'll let you go.
Thank you. Hey, it's good to see everybody. I just want to thank you guys for the time that you're giving to think about this, and potentially the time you'll be giving in the future in advance, just because I'm so excited about the opportunity. So just a quick summary as best I can. Working with church planning now for 30 something years, I've seen a lot of changes happening. And one of the things that happened was starting new churches became sort of the pattern that was followed was creating a way to start the church by gathering a lot of people who were either current tithe givers or people that knew how to tithe or knew how to give. They were familiar with the way churches have typically been financed. And so the strategy of a church planner was get a bunch of those people together, enough that you kind of have a critical mass that will cover the basic costs of operating the church, pay the pastor a little salary. And that's been kind of the way church planning has been done over the last 30 years or so. But the thing that happened was I started to realize that model was a problem when you come into places like urban neighborhoods, places where you don't have a lot of people who are even interested in a church, let alone thinking about tithing or giving. Even just giving is a foreign idea to them. Or you have underserved communities where, the offering of 100 people is going to be $50 a week or something like that, which really makes it hard to sustain ministry. Or you even have rural communities that have just been devastated by the economic shifts, and it's just not realistic to generate enough money to support a traditional church approach through tithes and offerings alone. And so when I launched out from what I was doing nationally, which was basically overseeing church planning all across the U.S. in all kinds of contexts, to dive into the urban thing, I realized this financial thing was a question, was a challenge we had to figure out, because literally just yesterday, for example, I talked with a couple who've been in Detroit for 6 years in an urban underserved neighborhood, and they just basically threw in the towel because they could never generate an economic strategy that would work. And part of the problem was they started behind they went there assuming they could get tithes and offerings adequately, which was a bad assumption to make. They tried to make it up through donor, which didn't cover it. So bottom line is, this is a current problem, but it's also a huge limitation to the ability of the church to become present in underserved communities, like urban neighborhoods and things like that, or rural communities, et cetera, et cetera. So a piece of the solution to this problem is identifying the potential of generating for-profit activities within the context that the church is trying to start. And so that's actually a really viable solution. We have some pretty cool examples of that already happening, where a pastor, a guy goes into a community, starts a coffee shop that's a for-profit, competitive with Starbucks, kind of localized coffee shop, and uses it on Sundays as a gathering place for the congregation. And so the coffee shop kind of pays for the space, and then the congregation sort of, helps cover the cost of the pastor. But those are very rare, and the people who are able to do that are very rare. And one of the things that could be a game changer is what you guys, if I understand what Norm's talking with you about, is the idea of mentoring some of these folks who are in communities where there's potential to generate some revenue via for-profit activities, or just bring that into the mix of funding the ministry of the church in a way where the church isn't just relying on tithes and offerings alone. But in order for that to happen, obviously many of these church planners they don't have a clue about anything business. And so they either need to be personally directly mentored, or maybe even better yet, recruit somebody that can be mentored to start and lead a business that will just create part of the needed revenue for that church to thrive, and not just survive, but to thrive in a normally difficult circumstance. And the potential here is, there are, just in Denver alone, for instance, there are 78 neighborhoods here in Denver where I live, 78 identified neighborhoods that generally the people living inside the city don't really think about going outside of the city to get what they want, except to go to the mountains to ski or that kind of stuff. They want to, they're urban people. So the idea of going to a church that's not in their neighborhood is weird to them, even if they are interested in going to church. So bringing the church close to people, connecting it close to them, is really important. And that's one of the potentials that this gives us. So I guess the final, so the big, if you want the, pull back 40,000 foot view, I think there's an incredibly underutilized opportunity to fill in the gaps of where the church is effectively connecting. And again, don't think of traditional church. Nothing down here is traditional in terms of, you're not going to have churches. Well, it's rare for a church to have like 5 acres. I mean, I'm familiar with timberland. I don't know how many acres you guys have there, but it's that if you had as much acreage in Denver as you have for the plant there for timberline, I mean, there's no way you could even think about affording it. It would just, and to build anything on that would be, so there's just aren't those opportunities here for that kind of expansion. So you have to think smaller, you have to think more localized, you have to think more neighborhood focused kind of churches when you get into the density of the city. The same thing is kind of true out in the rural communities too. So we're talking about something that is filling in the gaps that the prevailing model of church just kind of overlooks, and that's what you guys hopefully can help us do. I've got 50 different projects that we've worked with all over the United States so far. We've got more coming online, and one of the things we ask these guys to do is create a 5-year business plan that will harvest revenue out of 5 revenue streams, one of them being for-profit activity. But we have 4 other revenue streams that we want them to maximize and cultivate, so that they create a diversified portfolio of income that allows the church to get through, to survive and to thrive through thick and thin, whatever, and take the stress off the family, so they're not just reliant on tithes and offerings. Last thing that I want to say about that, tithes and offerings only approach actually de-incentivizes church planners from going after lost people because lost people don't give tithes. And so ironically, the model that a lot of these guys are taught to pursue actually pushes them away from what they say they want to do, which is to reach lost people. And providing this kind of opportunity as part of the mix in their thinking opens up increases the probability that they're actually going to be able to focus on reaching people, going after the one, and that's what we want them to be there for. So hopefully that helps.
Awesome. Yeah, that's helpful, Steve. And I'll fill in where there are questions, because I've heard your model a number of times. And then as we move this forward, we may bring you in again to say,
Yeah.
hey, is this realistic? Where, where
Yeah.
are the holes, that kind of thing. So you can help us as we move forward and think it through.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would say we do have we have one guy in Minneapolis that started 3 coffee shops. He's been doing it for over 10 years. It's a proven model that, with your background, and you could probably see the viability of it and then figure out how it translates to other options. We have a dance church where the guy, it's a dance, he was a professional dance instructor in Venezuela, came to faith and decided to ended up feeling called to start a church in Minneapolis, and started a for-profit dance studio first, met a bunch of people, has a place to meet. The dance studio pays for the meeting place, bada boom, bada bang. Now you have one of the funnest churches you'll ever go to, I'm telling you. So, and that's just, so the sky's the limit when you start opening up the categories. But those folks need good guidelines. They might be fabulous spiritual leaders, but just don't know what they're doing when it comes to business. And people with a business background and experience can help them potentially harvest revenue from a place that they would never have thought of it that could come. So, okay, I'll shut up and let you do it, Norm. So thanks for letting me be part of this.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you. God bless. Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. I just wanted you guys to meet Steve, to see, who he is, and get to hear his heart a little bit. He definitely knows what he's doing when it comes to church planning. He's incredible. He has helped church planning movements all over the world. So Leanne, thank you for sending that slide deck that you created. I'm going to go ahead and share it here. And I made just a few notes through it right now, and then we can start, going from there. I'm going to the automatic business page that I usually share. And then I never use PowerPoint, so
I have.
there we go. Not that I don't like PowerPoint, it's just that we have a guy that when I work with the team, he runs all the PowerPoint, so I don't have to touch it, and it's awesome. It's always a great way to go.
Yes.
And I honestly, I'm more familiar with Keynote and Prezi than I am with PowerPoint, so, which I'm a weird duck, so.
Yeah, dies by PowerPoint.
What's that?
HP lives and dies by PowerPoint.
I know, and most companies do as well. Yeah. Sometimes being ignorant in that helps, though, because people can't ask you to do the PowerPoint for them. Right, and I'm sorry I didn't introduce you guys. I wanted to. I was looking at the time, thinking let's move through this, because our hard stop is, let's see, it's going to be 12:30 for you guys, or no? I'm sorry, it is 1:30. Is that right?
We have 2, I think, more.
2? Okay. I had 2 invites for this meeting. One was an hour, one was an hour and a half. So it's awesome. If we have till 2, that's great. I have the time. I have the ability to do that. So perfect. Any questions, thoughts before we move into the PowerPoint slide? Anything that's been going through your mind, or reflection on what Steve just shared?
I was curious how many of them they've done based off of what he was just saying. It says that he was
Yeah.
in the coffee shop, but I wondered if there was any other, and the dance studio, is there any other?
I think, bye, Carrie. Sneaking out the back. I think there are several others, but not a huge amount, because he shared with me that this is part of the challenge, is he doesn't have a group like this. And so these church planners are coming up with ideas that he's going, yeah, I don't think that'll ever work, or I don't think you've really thought that through, or you need to run this by some business people, and they don't know the business people. And so it's hampered some of that. So what happens is a lot of them end up being like Uber drivers or DoorDash people, doing that kind of stuff, trying to subsidize their income. But that's not really, a great way to go, obviously, if you're a family person or a young family coming in and trying to plant a church. The Uber driver does help, because they meet a ton of people in their community. So that's a great way. But, income wise, it's a side gig. So yeah, they don't have that many businesses. There are other organizations other than Steve's doing this kind of thing, doing businesses on the side and then starting a church, or doing a business and out of that starting the church. But they're usually lone rangers out there. That's at least been my experience. So
it's a unique set of qualifications that you would need to be able to do it.
sorry, I didn't catch that. The volume is pretty low on.
That's kind of a unique set of qualifications or personality traits that to be entrepreneur and spiritual, they're kind of putting a lot of things together.
Yeah, it's kind of the unicorn out there, the person who can do that. For sure, it is a tough skill set to have all of them. And I honestly, if we want to talk theologically, I don't think God designed it that way. I think God designed it this way, where some people have some business skills and some people have some, church planning or preaching skills or whatever it is. And I think we're all supposed to work together. So this is more like kingdom of God than the outlier who has all the gifts needed. So let me share the presentation, and we'll start with that. It gives us a great start, so I really appreciate this, Leanne. I'm going to try not to be overly distracted, but we do have a brand new puppy in the house that's running around, and the owner of the puppy.
How are the floors doing?
Yeah.
What's that?
How are the floors?
Yeah, exactly. We have hardwood floors throughout the entire house, so there's no carpet. We've had to roll up the rugs and do all that stuff, and it's not our puppy, it's our daughter's puppy. She is living with us and chose the wonderful time of her life to do this. She is in her last semester of nursing school, so she has clinicals and residencies, and she was gone 12 and a half hours yesterday at the hospital. And so we're grandparents, dog parents, whatever, babysitting nonstop. So apologize, I'm gonna once in a while peek over, make sure the floors are okay. So as we look at this, I've made a couple of little notes here. You can see I'm going to go ahead and do this so I can use I can't use my pointer. This is PowerPoint. I just realized that's why I went to my iPad to do this. But you can see I under the inner city brick and mortar business, I said, let's define the brick and mortar. The reason I put that there is because of what Steve was saying. The idea here is to be as creative as possible. And so sometimes it won't be brick and mortar. It'll be some other type of business. And so I don't want to box us in to that thought. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So whatever we want to,
Whatever we want to call it. Yeah.
we just need to change that name there. If I write on this, can you guys see it?
Yeah.
I'm gonna expand. Okay. Oh, but my eraser doesn't work in PowerPoint. So there we go. All right.
Having fun with technology.
Yeah. I usually use GoodNotes. I don't know if you guys are familiar with GoodNotes, but GoodNotes is the most unbelievable tool for virtual presentation. So that's something I wanted to mention there, but I love the breakdown here, the you know, the who, the what, the where. Any thoughts on that from Royce, Deb, Leanne, since you've done it? Any other thoughts that have come to mind?
Well, under the what, serving and the practical outreach, as I was thinking through this, and you guys might just chime in, I was just thinking, is this also an opportunity where they could provide employment for a few of the, a few members of the community there, might be able to find employment right there. I don't know what other practical outreaches might be
And
part of this, but
yeah,
kind of, again, trying to think outside that box of what are the opportunities here?
Yeah,
In a practical way,
sure.
bring them in.
Opportunities, knowing that I don't have an eraser really makes me nervous when I write. For community, right? Because, and that's something we can put as part of the grid there. Like, we talk about a lot about the quadruple bottom line of BAM, which is, you know, economic ROI, kingdom ROI, but social and environmental ROI are two others. And the social there would be in line with helping a couple of families find employment in the community. And so as we look at businesses, I think the more of those boxes they check, the more favorable it is, right? The more we say this is like the top level potential business as far as opportunity that we can. Sorry, I've got all kinds of stuff going on. I don't know if you guys heard that. The Ring doorbell just went off. So I do want us to keep that in mind, that quadruple bottom line. And so I'm glad you put that in there, the practical piece of as far as the outreach. When you wrote that, when I read it, I was wondering if you were thinking for us, like practical outreach for us, but what you mean there is for the business.
Yep, I do.
Correct, right? Okay. So again, it doesn't have to be brick and mortar. And there definitely we want the larger impact. If I go to the next slide, again, I touched on the brick and mortar here. This is the only time I did that. I didn't keep touching on it on every slide, but inner city communities have been left churchless. What are the biggest issues, pain points you face currently? So that'd be one of the questions for the church planner you're talking about, right?
Right.
What part of the missionary work is working well? Can you unpack that?
Well, my thought behind that was, are there parts that are working for missionaries who are in these urban centers? And I don't know what that looks like. Maybe there isn't a part that's working. And so
what do you mean by a part?
Could be reformatted, but are missionaries in urban centers and doing outreach in these urban centers, but they keep butting up against a wall, right? So it's not taking off, which has prompted this discussion here. But is there a part of what they're doing that has reached the community that they're trying to reach?
So this is ministry wise, not business necessarily.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Is what my thought was.
Sure.
And again, this was just kind of throwing some stuff out there to.
Which actually is a good question, because if there's something
Yeah, and
that's working well, there's something that's
Sorry.
available for them on the missionary side that could also help figure out what other opportunities to explore for business. Right. Because it might give us more of an indication for
Yeah.
indication for where are my strengths or where.
Right. Right. If someone was already working in these urban centers and has relationships with people, have conversations with the people who live there, maybe that's some good insight that we can glean
Yeah.
as to develop the business ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see us benefiting from that. Just an additional note that you guys need to be aware of is that part of Steve's approach is every one of these church planners has a church planning coach. These are people who have successfully planted churches, multiple churches. Steve himself coaches some of the people. So they do have a coach for all the ministry side of things, and he has a very structured approach in identifying demographics, spiritual interests, those kind of things. He has a huge, he's very data driven in that way. And that's something that probably could be shared with us that would give insight as to the people in the community, which would then might turn into identifying the opportunity for business as well.
So that would fall right into that missionary feedback on the bottom. And I just left that blank because I thought, what is that? I don't know what that feedback is. And so if he has a lot of data, then that would be important, I think, for us.
Yeah. I'm gonna change our wording to church planner there to help us out. I think it's good for the national work when we're doing bandwidth national work, just to call it church planner, because the question always becomes, when do they stop being a missionary and when they start being a pastor? And I just rather leave it at church planner. So this is info gathered from church planner, right?
And those categories, I mean, we can change that. We can again make those more.
We can develop those as we go. So the approach, or any other thoughts on that before I moved us on, but good. All right. Core tenants, BAM, and inner city initiative plans and plan and build brick and mortar business. Again, just build business with kingdom purpose. Partner BAM mentors, missionaries to focus vision and maximize outreach. Grow community outreach and God's message of love and salvation as part of the business, right? Is what you're saying here. Is that correct?
That is, yeah. Yep, that's what I was kind of, and again, this is open for discussion. I was just trying to, but kind of what BAM brings to the table and how we help, maybe that's kind of what I was going after here. With the approach of how we would step into this space and help.
Is that number 3 still?
Yeah.
Okay. So walk me through this, and you can see I put a few notes in there. Walk me through this cycle that you created.
So for me, I like a visual of the players in the program or in the initiative. So I like to just for everybody to know kind of who's all involved. How many people does it take? How many different aspects do we have to really make this happen?
Yeah.
So for me, that I like this visual, and we can again change some of this wording or change it completely. having that visual of what are the different areas we need
Mm-hmm.
to
That's
bring into this circle to make it work.
Yeah. So then I really like that. Walk me through each one of these and the people that you see involved here, just so we understand your wording to make sure we're on the same page.
Sure. So at the top, the BAM leadership is you and Carrie and this team and BAM in general, which I guess then, and then the ministry team, I thought maybe there is, and you said this earlier, that they do have they have minister or church planting coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So that would definitely be kind of a piece to this puzzle. And then circling around to clockwise, dedicated program resources. For this particular program, I think you would need to have some dedicated people, this team, for example. Yeah, the other slides would go on to kind of explain in more detail each one of the pieces that we decided on. Prayer warriors, I put that in there because I think everything needs prayer. So I would think we would need this specifically lifted up in prayer.
Anybody want to argue with that?
Huge fan. The missionaries, so we would change that to church planters.
Okay.
And then our business mentors that we would recruit.
Okay, so
If we're following the BAM.
yeah, so which one, this one here, since I'm pointing and you can't see, where do you see, that's who I thought this was, so help me understand that. The dedicated program resources.
Well, that would be us, I think, this team.
Oh, vetting team.
So vetting.
And I don't like the word vetting team. We need to change that. That to me sounds like we're wondering whether you're worthy of us or not.
Yes.
So, okay, so I'm going to do that. We'll change the wording eventually. This is the BAM, the business leaders, timberliners we identify to work with them. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, so in my mind, I had the program resources. So if I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, so my visual of this is an extension of BAM.
Mm-hmm.
So BAM globally and then BAM urban. And so I don't know if that's true. If that's not true, then.
Yes, it was true originally. And this has kind of evolved in my brain a little bit because I think if we do this effort and it's working really well, I think we could offer, let me say it that way, we could offer this vetting team, again, changing the word eventually, for world missionaries who are trying to figure out business in their area. It would take a few extra specialties. Like I'm thinking Billy, who's not in the room, but international import export, he has a little bit of skill there. We have a number of business leaders in Timberline who have started businesses overseas. That's a whole other ballgame. So we could have a vetting team for that as well. That would be really beneficial, because I think that's one of the big problems is you've got missionaries trying to start businesses and they don't know if they should or what business and so on. So we could have a team that identifies that and then turns them over to some business leaders that are right. They have the right fit for that business. So just saying that to say, this is an extension of the BAM effort we've been doing in the sense that it is a new area, not just nationally, but a new area in the business world that that is serving a different purpose, a slightly different purpose. It's more of that ground level. Do we start? Do we not? What do we start? And how do we? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or am I raising questions or concerns?
No.
Okay. I'm trying to see all your facial expressions, but you're really
It's
tiny.
so hard.
You're really tiny on my screen.
And you're almost
So-
like guys.
I know, I'm sure I'm on the big screen, yeah. I had to make sure my teeth were all cleaned out before from lunch before I got on, because I knew you'd be able to see that.
Don't appreciate it.
So with that in mind, what I just said, the BAM mentors, should that be that? So that is the vetting team you're talking about. And then the business partners, ministry business partners would be the Timberliner
Yes.
business person that we team with them, correct? Okay.
Correct.
So then I go back to here and say, let's clarify this, because I wrote this as the vetting team now.
Okay, so no, sorry, I misunderstood what you said. So I was thinking the program resources, the dedicated program resources, that dot would be the vetting team.
Okay, and then
team.
and then
The business mentors, and I couldn't remember the right verbiage, are the
Mhm.
business, the Timberliner business partners
Okay.
that would one-on-one mentor the church planter. Yeah, is what I meant by business mentor.
perfect.
Yep.
Sorry, it's so messy. Again, the lack of an eraser drives me nuts. But this is like real whiteboarding now,
Yeah.
because there's no eraser. All right, so then the ministry and business partners, who is that?
So that I wasn't sure, but I felt like there might be some other, just I don't, like when they go. So when the business starts and they need to go and get a vendor and they need to go do this and they go do that, and maybe there's a ministry piece, a church piece to that.
Yeah.
I should say correct, like a BAM or a Timberline piece to that. I don't know. So that is up for grabs. If that's even a necessary dot.
So maybe the local team around the church plant, and then the volunteers are just, yeah, that's self-explanatory from all over. Yeah, this is good. This is really good. I do the same thing. I'm very visual, so this kind of stuff really helps. What do you guys think, Deb and Royce? Is there any piece missing in this? Or maybe redundant?
Ministry and business partners. Once you get 2 or 3 started, they can minister or kind of help out. I mean, if there's two of them that have already done, say, coffee shops, they might have that connection where they have already gone through the trials.
Yeah. So maybe somewhere in here.
It's expensive to start too. I was working with a guy that's $25,000 just for one piece of equipment. He needs 3 of them. So they have to have the capital somewhere too.
So this is kind of those who have gone before.
Yeah.
I like
And then
building these partnerships.
maybe here is those, the finance capital
Oh, yeah.
partners. Is that what you were saying, Royce?
Yeah. But you have to have it somewhere.
Yeah,
Show me cash flow.
Show me the money.
You have a plan?
Well, we know a guy well, we know the guy who owns Ziggy's. And
Oh,
he said, if you wanna hang out, you buy a coffee shop. If you wanna make money, you own a drive-through.
Yeah.
So they need to own an end cap. That's time for a different discussion.
So they need a Starbucks with a drive-through, is
Yep.
what you're saying.
Mhm.
You gotta have both. Yeah. Yeah, this is good because this is really clarifying. It creates that real good visual. We'll, we need to redo this obviously, but yeah, helpful. Good input, Royce. Anything else? All right. And if they need real estate, we know somebody in the room who can help with that too. All right. So this was just kind of the rollout of that
Yeah, yes, yeah.
groups. Yeah.
I just thought,
Okay.
yeah, just kind of dedicated program resources and just go through.
Mhm. Let me keep moving here. So yeah. So all right. You just
And then
that's
that was, yeah, the approach, that final slide that says approach, I mean, that's, yeah, right there. I mean, this obviously needs to be worked out, but this would just be that basic approach of here's the business partner and what they have to provide, not business partner, that would be church planter. And then what they do, and then the missionary would be crossed out and put the BAM team, and what we bring to the table. And so here's our buckets that we bring, and then the church planter, here's the buckets that you need to bring.
I see.
don't know if that's necessary at this point.
No, I think that's good,
Nice
but
overview. Was running out of time before my son's basketball game that we got to watch last night. Two people can go.
Nice.
High school
That's exciting.
basketball. Yeah.
CPer is what this means here. The church planner. So yeah, that's good. I think we do need to be very, very clear on that. And we did that in a way, we did that with the engagement document when we did BAMs for the overseas work. Basically where the lines are drawn, what we will and won't do, and what the church planner should and shouldn't do.
And I thought I remembered something about that, so that could be a plug and play into this.
I think we'll have to adjust it for this for sure. Yeah.
And then this was just so my idea behind this business plan was what our questions to them. So
yeah, and we'll need to develop some form of probably online form that's a live document that can be shared, and they keep on filling out and we keep commenting on and going back and forth, so that we're all able to look at this and can come to meetings with all this information in front of us. This is probably for church planning way ahead of, we start with the business idea before we go with the funding with church planning. It's just a whole, yeah, there are different ways of looking at this, but and in the location, you see I wrote if needed, depending on what type of business they get. I think most of the time there is a location needed, but I'm thinking of like one of the churches that Steve helped plant is called Doubters Church, and they meet in a bar. And bars are awesome because on Sunday morning they're empty.
yeah.
And so they don't need a location. And actually the guy intentionally went to bars to hang out, to find out the spiritual need in this community and to build some relationships with some people. And he was he had built this one relationship with the guy who kept going. And basically the guy says, well, you know, I'm a doubter and we're all doubters here. And he goes, well, what if we start a group of doubters and talked about Jesus? And that's how Doubters Church was started, just from a conversation like that. I probably don't have all the details perfect, but it's close to that. I think these are huge, huge. These are the things that most of these guys or gals will not think about. How long it's going to take. They're going to way underestimate the time it takes to build a business. And they're going to way underestimate how many people it takes to make it happen. And so this is where we can bring a lot of reality and a lot of wisdom for them. So and obviously we keep building this. There's quite a few steps here that we need to put. I think you have right here. Yeah, I love this. I think this will be very, very important once somebody agrees to say, you know, or we all agree this is the business to go after, then sitting down with them and creating something like this will be really critical. What pieces to play where, or to put in where, when.
Having something.
I almost see like the need for maybe two different levels, like when you're thinking in terms of the questionnaire, like maybe the first, like a pretty high level one where they can just sort through ideas so that they can help vet out some of their own ideas.
So
they're like, okay, I'm thinking this, then if there's, you know, a questionnaire or something that we can even just help them walk through something in their own minds, you know, they can try this type of a business, like, oh, okay, I see issues with that one, so let me circle back and try it. So kind of just a really higher level type of a thing.
And then once we identify viable ideas, then we move to these more detail.
Exactly. Just they're not spending a ton of time on going way down into the weeds if they can figure out fairly quickly that, okay, I'm going to run into an issue if I'm trying to do this.
That's really good. And then this one is the best practice.
We can call that something else, but
yeah. Oops. And see, this would be a huge tool to put in their hands to even eliminate ideas right away before they even bring them to us.
Right.
Because by nature, most church planners are they're dreamers. They wouldn't be moving into the inner city if they weren't dreamers. So, you know, we're trying to help them from the vision of the month here.
That would be awesome to give them some market research on some different opportunities, and then they can look through that and see.
Beekeepers is not something to do in the inner city.
I didn't hear that.
I said beekeepers aren't something to be doing in the inner city.
That is a good, maybe the roof, you know, rooftop beekeeping. That'd be a new, but yeah, that's exactly right. But, you know, here's where I think we can team a little bit with Steve, because I'd like to find out what demographic studies they are already putting together. By the way, Billy is not going to be able to come. I don't know if you're seeing the updates come up on my screen here, but yeah, so he's texting me saying I something big came up and he wasn't able to get away. So I apologize. It's because it was 45 minutes before, no, maybe an hour or two before I texted you, Bonnie, and he was texting with me saying, yeah, plan on being there. Everything's good. So,
Life happens.
yeah. So I think from Steve, they're doing a lot of the demographic studies that would be very helpful to us to help them walk through. They know how to look at the demographic studies with an eye for church planning. but looking at demographic studies with an eye for business, they may not know what to look for.
It's a really good point.
And they probably should be helped there. So, you know, let me just make a note on that.
Well,
Love
that's
to use
a good function of this team before, yeah, before they meet. If we have that capability.
If you're going inner city, and you're going to put a coffee shop. I don't think that's going to put coffee on there.
something like that. That'll help me understand. Yeah, those are really good pieces to think through, because a lot of this, I mean, this is this right here, right? I mean, it's that first part. We don't, as you said, don't want them, you know, going through a ton of details when it's not even viable opportunities that don't make sense at all. Yeah, you may have a church planner who grew up in a beekeeping family that may be thinking that. So you're right, Royce.
They're gonna break out in a new.
Well, that's just like the group Bill and I were working with down in, earlier this year or last year. They had bees, and we asked, you know, what are you doing with the honey? How much honey do you produce? Well, not quite sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So why do you have 10 hives?
Yeah, and it's
Now I have 2 cows. We had to sell some, and there's just.
yeah. I remember that conversation, and we, you know, yeah. I remember thinking, wow, where do we start with that? Like,
And they have scarves that they made. And what do you do with the scarves? You have 6 different businesses.
yeah. Yeah, they were just people with a big heart and
Yeah.
no business sense.
Or internet.
No.
Yeah, and they actually self-admitted that. They, like, you know, basically said, we have no idea what we're doing. Like, no clue. We just know there needs to be some money to fund this thing that we're doing. So this is good. And obviously this is going to be a working document, right? We're going to be tweaking this and adjusting it and readjusting it, looking at it. And
Yep, 100%, yep.
the timeline is going to be something we have to kind of figure out as we go. But I think there are some givens that we're going to have to, not necessarily based on the month and the year and all that, but, you know, the chronological order of what they need to put in place to start a business is not always clear to somebody who doesn't understand business. And so what do you need first? Do you need the money first? Do you need this? You know, they don't know what comes first. And so we're gonna, I think, creating a chronological almost a punch list for them will be helpful at some point.
And then probably a working timeline. And I did not have one of those. I've seen it in Excel, where you've got the different parts of the project, of the business. And you've got some different timelines highlighted for what you, so it's one document, but kind of it encompasses a few different timelines. So that might be something that we can provide that would be helpful as well.
I think that would be great. And the other thing when we're thinking about timelines is that you can also have kind of some meeting points in there too. So once they hit this spot on their timeline, then that's when they need to, you know, have another meeting with a mentor or something like that, just so you kind of build in your coaching or your mentorship along the timeline. So, you know, somebody might have a longer period trying to get a piece together, but that just but you can't really get to the next step until you finish that first step, so.
Some
That
triggers
makes sense.
on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I was thinking as I was going through this, that there would be a lot, this would probably be a pretty in-depth mentorship with this church planter.
Yeah.
There would have to be pretty frequent meetings, I would think, at first.
At first, yeah. It's definitely a walk alongside more than just advise here and there. And it depends on the person. It depends on the church planner. I think we need to come up with a flexible system because some of them won't need it as much as others for sure. Yeah. This is good. These are great points. So these are my kind of bullet points. I'm sorry, this is a little messy, but is this where we would measure those the quadruple bottom line? Is that what you're saying? And projected? And what?
Yeah, this is just, I thought I'd throw this one in there because it is good to measure where you've been, where you're going. So this can look however it needs to look, or maybe this is an at the end type of a thing. But it sounds like Steve is all about data, and I know that we use a lot of data in recruitment all the time, and it's
well, and honestly, I do think that it's important to measure the quadruple bottom line because if we measure souls, but we don't measure ROI in financial ROI, eventually we're going to have to stop measuring souls because we're not going to get them. Because we won't have, and if you just measure ROI without measuring souls, then at some point you got to back up and go, okay, well, the whole point of this is kingdom impact. What are we missing here? So, I think the quadruple bottom line is it's something most churches don't do well at, by the way, measuring.
Not a lot of people like to be stuck in the data.
Well, it's that, and I agree. That's absolutely true. The other thing that's true, I think, is that it's really hard to measure intangibles sometimes. Yeah. And because it's hard, we stay away. It's uncomfortable, and so we just
Just thinking of that, but this made me think of something. I think going back to the idea of the initial questionnaire would be to put something in there that also is like the E-Myth personality type thing. So, like in the business, who are you? Are you the technician? Are you the manager? Kind of knowing what's your personality type, because that's where you're going to gravitate, because that's easier for you to do. So that's what you gravitate to. And so kind of the idea of how in that building the business timeline, how do you kind of get some of those systems put in place fairly early on? Like, what's your bookkeeping system? What's your marketing system? What are those pieces that have to get done, but once you usually jump into a business, you're so busy doing whatever you think you need to do that day that you forget to do all of the other stuff, especially if it's stuff that you're not very comfortable with or that you don't enjoy as much.
Yeah. Oh, totally agree. There's, the E-Myth is a good way of doing it. There's other possibilities, but the E-Myth, we could get some people reading that, and that would be helpful, I think, to them to realize. If they won't read that book, then maybe we already know. That's good.
One of the books I read when I was starting Avenue West, and I read it and I was like, oh, I know accounting, I'm fine, but because I figured I could always catch up on it later, because I know my accounting. Like, I'm too busy doing this, and then I was like, oh, my bookkeeping system I should have been doing that a year ago. So
correct. And you've got to know yourself that That's why the personality thing is really critical. You've got to know the areas where you're going to need more help, without a doubt. And by the way, if this really grows and blows up, and we've got now 30 people who are wanting to plant churches, and we're helping them out, and the eMyth thing could really come into play. Kurt Richardson is a partner with eMyth somehow. I don't know at what level and all that, but he would jump in on that and help us out there for sure. So, anything else right there? That was a good pullback. And I put it in two places. I put it here, and I put it here, the eMyth personality type. I don't know. I think it belongs more on the previous page, but wherever we'll get it in there. That was it, right? Other thoughts?
This was good discussion.
Thanks for being the partner. That was good.
What's that?
I was just telling Leon, thanks for doing the PowerPoint. That was a good way to get us all organized.
It was. I actually was going to start right before, or right after you send it. I had scheduled to put something together but it wouldn't have been this elaborate in any stretch. But that was on my list to do, and so I was really happy to see yours come in. That's awesome.
There you go. Saved you a couple of hours or an hour, whatever.
Yeah, because I've done the eMyth thing at personality, and I am not the person who would put this together with joy.
With joy, I like that part.
I'm gonna have to read that book. I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah.
So it's Gerber. What's his first name? Oh.
Michael, maybe?
You know, Carrie may have a bunch of copies of it that she might be able to give one to you, because we bought a bunch of copies at one point to give to some of the business leaders or the missionaries who were doing business. So any other thoughts on this? This is a great start. This is really a great start to get us kind of moving. Let me ask this. Who would want to take what part of this? Why is this the only page on here now? Okay. Telling you, it's not my familiar tool, so I'm working through it. As I go back here, we just need to let's use this. Why not use this as a basis to start moving us forward, right? It's already a great build. So I'm trying to get, okay, this is the beginning. So I don't know, Leanne, do you want to go through and tweak this?
Yeah.
I can send you this document with my horrible writing. Okay. And then I was wondering if some of others would want to do other pieces. Like I'll have a conversation with Steve and find out what they use for their demographic studies. I'll see if I can get a copy of whatever it is that he uses to get them to fill out. But then as we go to these other pieces, if I can get there, and I can also find out what the church planner, what the buckets are that they bring to the table, what they expect those guys to bring to the table. That might be different actually for each church planner. But the idea questionnaire, I used the English idea there, idea.
Yeah.
Deb, is that something you would be interested in just taking a peek at?
Yeah, I can start trying to think of different, or come up with a rough template that we could all just get us started maybe, and then.
Yeah, just a skeleton to get us going.
Would you also be able to ask Steve if he has anything, kind of, are there any pieces that he already uses for people?
That's a great question. Yeah, has he been doing any vetting, or people just come to him? Kind of how has the process worked?
I think he just tells them, you need those 5 streams of revenue,
Okay.
come up with some great ideas. And then they come back to him or to their coach and they say, here's what I'm thinking. And some of the coaches are more qualified than others for business.
Okay.
And they just go, yeah, like, I mean, if that's probably why so many of them ended up as Uber drivers, because they were like, well, yeah, I don't know what else to tell you, but it's pretty easy to become an Uber driver. You need a car and a driver. So yeah, I don't know that has been very developed, but I'll find out.
And then would we need to recruit the Timberliner kind of business mentors? Or do you have people in mind who would commit to this kind of a time commitment?
Yeah.
On this?
So
What is your vision kind of there?
So we've already got a pretty good pool, but we need some more. And part of it is that so there's this tension between going and getting more and making sure we have opportunities for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So as we create these opportunities, I think some certain people will come to mind. This so-and-so would be good for this, so-and-so. And so then we've got this pool, but then we'll go after more once that develops. That fair?
Yeah, yeah.
So Leanne, you've got something you're pulling out of here to work on, and Deb, you do as well. Are we letting Royce off the hook here? Royce, is there any piece on here that where you thought I could work on this?
I don't know, I mean, obviously, when you get into the finance or capital aspect, but I think that's gonna have to figure out what the business is.
Mhm.
So,
That felt like a really simple, kind of cash projection type of a thing that they could have to go along with the idea questionnaire, sort of like a rigid service for this.
I can't hear what Deb is saying. I'm sorry.
it's just a cash flow model where on a projection scale,
Yeah.
if you think you're gonna sell A, you're gonna have to sell this many of them or whatever it is.
Yeah. Again, that's a little tough to develop until you've got the business idea, right?
I was thinking maybe just a really simple high level one that they could use along with the idea questionnaire. I kind of like, I think I'm kind of interested in this, but
Or
if they're
maybe
a
what-
numbers person, they can.
Or what they know, or they have, if they have any, I mean, kind of a financial statement. Here's what I have, and here's some people that are gonna support me. So,
Yeah.
You have $0 and you wanna start this.
Yeah.
You have to figure out how to get to X dollars.
It's a good point. And then maybe the other side, I'm sorry, was somebody else talking because again, it's hard to hear. The other side would be the demand in the market for that product, for whatever product. Like, is there even a demand? Is there a need for it? How big is that demand? They'd need to do some research, but so I'm just thinking through, like, as I'm working on my business for Maldives, what I'm trying to develop there, I'm like, it's agriculture. Well, what's the demand? How big is the demand, and what size of the market are you going to try to go after? All those questions that church planners probably never think about. So I think there are some worksheets, maybe is what we could call it, that they could work through on that. I doubt that that's part of the demographic studies that Steve has.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
so kind of a market research on,
I get, yeah, it's, I don't know how thorough we want to make it, but until they figure out their idea.
exactly,
Right.
that's something high level.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
sounds like if the guy who wanted to do the dance studio, how much are people paid for dance lessons, or, just some
Yeah.
metrics.
Yeah, and if you're, I mean, if how many dance studios are there in the area? Or
Can charge $4 for a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And like you said, what is the demographic? Yeah, so that, you're not gonna open a kid's basketball facility when it's all young, young kidless families or something.
or geriatric community.
Right, right. And then my other question is, once they do pick the business and they're moving down that line, are we providing them with a business plan template? Or is that something Steve gives them, or do we have that outlined yet?
No, we definitely need to help them with the business plan template.
And so that, I don't know if that comes before or after the mentor gets assigned to them.
I think it's probably helpful for us to develop a flexible template. A template that can be adjusted based on, we have the fundamentals.
So you didn't get out the.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, we need some sort of structure. I want to take as much work away from our business leaders as possible so that they can volunteer to help.
Right.
If they look at it and they go, I'm going to have to put 30 hours a week into this, there's no way. We're not going to get anybody.
No.
But if it's something that's kind of a plug and play that they can oversee and look at and help with, then it's much more feasible for us to get more people involved.
Yeah. So maybe that's the timeline thing that we need to think through. Like they get the questionnaire, they go through their machinations and come up with, okay, I think I've got a viable idea. And then maybe that's when we do, okay, here's kind of more of that plan template that goes into a little more detail. That's something that we have enough information that they can or if we're going to meet with them.
Yeah.
We can go back to them and say, okay, here's where you need to, you look like you got this all together, but I think you're missing a big chunk here, and kind of help them work through making sure that they have gone through all the different pieces. And then once they make it through there, then that's when they go on to a mentor, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's start working on that timeline, and then we can retweak it and just, bring it in front of all of us for all our eyes once we kind of get a timeline design. And is that the timeline, is that something you're going to work on, Leanne? Or
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to put something together.
okay. And then so you've got that, and you've got the PowerPoint. I guess that's the timeline is somewhat of a chronological punch list here. That's what I had written there. But so Deb, you've got the idea questionnaire, and Royce, what are you taking? Anything or?
More on the business plan template,
Okay.
financials, where they're coming up.
Okay. And Bonnie, you've got all these notes to make sure yeah. Okay. Okay. I was trying to erase again. I keep double tapping my pencil so that doesn't work. And then what do we want to give Billy? Just all the dirty work? Just everything that's. I just wanted to throw that in there because we're recording this, and Billy might, well, I'll send it to Billy, see if he wants to listen to it. We wanted his name in there. We love you, Billy. Yeah, I think for now, this is it. I mean, this was good, really a great way to start. this meeting was about identifying what pieces, starting at least moving in that direction. So that's awesome. Is meeting once every 2 weeks too much, or do we want to do every month until we get this thing going, every 2 weeks? I'm afraid if we do every month and we need 6 meetings, then, you know, we're way down the line. But 6 months is a long time.
I'm fine with every 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah,
Okay. I think every week's a little heavy.
yeah.
But yeah, so, okay. Do we want to look at calendars right now, or
Let's do it.
we're here, we're in the room?
Are we talking an hour or an hour and a half?
I like an hour and a half because it allows us to not, you know, be ridiculously rushed.
Yep, agree.
So 2 weeks exactly is, if Thursdays are good, then it's the 25th.
That works for me.
Mhm.
The 25th, I could be on from noon your time to 1:30. Does that work?
Yeah.
I
Okay.
probably won't be able to get here right at noon, but I could be here by 12:15, 12:30.
Okay. All right, and I may need to, well, no, that'll work. So noon to, wait, what did I say? Noon your time? The time zones are screwing me up right now.
That's
2 to 3:30. Yeah, I'm gonna have probably to end about 5 minutes early will be my, because I've got to get on a coaching call right at that time, at the end time, but we can do that. If we can end 5 minutes early, it'd be awesome. Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, again, Leanne, thank you so much for putting this together. This really accelerated our conversation.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Really, really helpful. And then as we move this thing forward, you know, different ones of you will take different roles of the leadership of pieces of it. We'll let you run with, and we'll figure out what that all looks like as we go. But based on interests and giftings, that's why we're all together. So grateful for you guys. This has been something that I've been talking to Steve for about 6 months. That's why I didn't want to go another 6. And Steve's really excited about this because he's wanted to have somebody help them with this for a long time. And I keep referring back to Steve because Steve's kind of our first one, but I think there are others that will be able to come alongside, other groups and other efforts, and that'll be really helpful. I just got an invite from Pamela Damford.
I don't know why that happened. I don't understand iPhones. My wife does it.
Well, thank your wife for sending us the invite to set this meeting up. Appreciate her.
Norm, I will check with IT because I know we could get a mic to plug in. Which would,
Yeah.
I'm sure be very helpful for you next time. So I'll.
Yeah. It was good with, you know, Leanne and you were real nice and loud, but when it gets further down, it gets really quiet. So wasn't horrible, but yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Well, I made a note to do that.
Maybe next time I can move to my Good Notes system that I love to use.
Okay, I have to look that up. I have not.
Well, you know, and I can actually, what I didn't even think of is I can take an entire PowerPoint and drop it into Good Notes and draw from there and do all the stuff
So
that
is
I.
that- Exactly. So is that is it an app that I can download to my Mac, or is it a program?
It's an app that really, I have never used it with my computer. With my Mac, I've used it with my iPad and my phone.
Oh,
So I literally have sat, you know, where I can sit in front of a group of people and I'm presenting from my phone. It's connected to the monitor and I'm drawing with my fingers circling, and with the iPad, obviously much better.
okay.
And I'm not a salesman for GoodNotes, but they've just upped their game to where, like, today or tomorrow we present to an executive board, and there's 3 of us partners that are presenting. We're all living in different states, and we're going to have the same whiteboard on each of our iPads, whereas I'm writing, it shows up on their iPad, which projects to the leader. And then we turn the page and my partner can write on his iPad and it shows up everybody. It's like it's amazing. Really, really helpful.
Wow.
So.
Good notes / roll.
I have sold this thing to a lot of people, so I should be getting something, you think. Yeah. Well, hey, thanks. I'm going to let you go. I know you guys have some really busy days, and I'm going to go check on a little doggy and make sure our floors are dry everywhere. So thank you so much. So grateful for you guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Norma.
All right, I got a new update on my iPhone, and I cannot add
Oh, no.
the thing anymore.
I think mine's coming tonight. It's like, you will get your update.
And it's